That's Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
The crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
David Montgomery on the Lions. Former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's the flag. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. Snap. Hold. Kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open. No!
What happened? Oh shit.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the only football podcast tonight. Jayden Daniels has been named the starter for the Commanders. I mean, no duh, right? But this is huge for the Commanders. He has been named the starter by Dan Quinn. We're going to get into also Tua being brutally honest about Brian Flores, his former head coach. We're also going to talk about Caleb Williams, Bo Nix having great preseason games in week 2. And of course, we're going to end it all off with the Chives with Kyle. Oh, let's get it. America is football. Football
is America. If you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass. On the moment in time, I don't give a damn. Oh my god! No! You loved it.
30-27. Chiefs win. Chiefs win 30-20.
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new Monday special edition of the Only Football Podcast. My name is Kyle, and that's Rick.
I'm Rick, that's Kyle.
And as Rick said in the intro, no duh, right? I mean, the Washington Commanders, they've made official what's been clear since April 25th, and that's that Jayden Daniels is going to be the starting quarterback when they go in week 1. Dan Quinn announced this news today on Monday. Yep. So this is the time of the year where we're hearing some coaches come out and kind of clear up these quarterback battles so that they have at least one game going in as the guy, right? Yep. It's kind of tricky for your offense to be like, okay, we need to start kind of coming around one of these guys. Who's it going to be? And you don't want to prolong that for too long. And we'll talk about more of that later. But Dan Quinn said today was the day, a couple of days after Antonio Pierce said Minshew was going to be the guy. The coach is starting to come out and let us know the things that maybe were apparent to all of us when they drafted, Jayden Daniels, but it still needed to be said. And for Jayden Daniels, it does start a new era for the Commanders. And I look at this quarterback and I think, man, he's got all the tools to be an MVP type quarterback in our league. And there's going to be a lot of pressure, of course, for him to come out and be great right away. But I don't think that the moment's going to be too big for Jayden Daniels. He played good in the preseason. He threw a deep ball, then he ran in for a touchdown, gave the ball to his mom. Like that, they had this whole moment. So I think for Commander fans, they're like, okay, he's going to get the week 1 nod. You can never be sure with old school coaches like Dan Quinn, these defensive guys that will still want you to go out there and earn it. Well, we kind of knew all along, but now Jayden Daniels gets the honor of his team knowing that he's the leader of the Commanders and the beginning of a new era for Washington.
Yeah, and it was pretty obvious, like you said, like everyone knew, especially Commanders fans knew, as soon as, he was drafted number 2 for their organization, he was going to be the starter, man. Like, let's be real. That's why I said, like, no duh, right? Like, coming, like Dan Quinn just had to say it for everybody to be like, huh. It was similar to like when the Bears drafted Caleb Williams. It was like, yes, they're going to draft him, but when they called his name out, when he was picked, when he put that Bears hat on, I was like, the wait's over. Finally, it is set in stone. And you said it. Jayden Daniels has been playing really well. He had a deep ball for 42 yards. It was like the same pass he had his first college game or whatever. He was doing really well his week one. Both of those drives that he led, they scored. I mean, there were field goal attempts, but they were scoring drives. And then, of course, he scored a 3-yard touchdown on his feet. So he's got some speed to him. He's got some versatility, which I feel like is going to be something that a lot of people look for in quarterbacks. I mean, even Caleb Williams, just this past weekend rushed one for a touchdown. We got Drake Mays rushing it. We got other quarterbacks running it out, and trying to be versatile and trying to add more to the offense other than just their arm. But Jayden Daniels, yeah, man, he looks good. Obviously, we talked about how skinny he was, but Devontae Smith doesn't seem to have an issue with that. So I think at quarterback, and especially with the way the league is just leaning towards protecting these guys, and they want these quarterbacks to play for 15, 20 years if possible. So I think he'll be fine. Obviously, he's going to get some more muscle behind him. But the Commanders, the Commanders have a really special guy there at quarterback, and the Commanders fans should be just as happy about this decision as anybody in the NFL is, really.
Yeah, and for Dan Quinn, I mean, when he was telling the reporters that he was going to name Jayden Daniels the starter, he made a joke, but there's a little truth to this joke that I want to ask you. He said, "You were pressuring me so much over the last few weeks, I felt like it was time to promptly tell you. I'd know, you'd know, he'd know." And he said this with a smile. But there is an enormous amount of pressure. Of course, Caleb Williams isn't experiencing this in Chicago. But for the teams that have drafted a young rookie quarterback, the Commanders, the Broncos are really the only two teams that fit this profile. Of course, J.J. McCarthy would have been in the same boat had he not gotten hurt. But these two teams, I mean, if you watch post-game press conferences, during the week news conferences, it's all the same thing. Why isn't Bo Nix the starting quarterback? Why haven't you named him the starting quarterback? So this pressure kind of really comes in from the media to be the first one to break the story that the starting quarterback is going to be fill in the blank. And they ask over and over and over. Now, for the coaches, I don't really know if that pressure, I don't know if sometimes they delay the process in the fight because of the reporters, because it's just a way to remind everybody in the building, I'm in control. I'm calling the shots. It doesn't matter who's drafted or how many times you guys ask me. I'll name the starter when I want to name the starter. Yeah. And I think that's going on a little bit in Denver right now with the over asking of the question. When all along we feel like we knew Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix would start week one. But how do you think the pressure from the media kind of like plays into this whole process?
I'm positive it has to infiltrate a coach, a player, a GM, a front office's head at one point or another. I'm not convinced that these guys can just like shut it out completely. I read something earlier that Caleb Williams takes a lot of these doubts, and similar to Jordan, similar to Brady, similar to Kobe, they take these personally, and it drives them. It keeps them consistent. It keeps them motivated to basically outplay whatever expectations are put on them. So for this stuff to be said by players and coaches that it doesn't get in my head, I don't watch ESPN, I don't watch this and that, I think there's a little bit that gets into it. Now, Dan Quinn has been a coach before, a head coach for the Falcons, if I'm not mistaken, right? He was the Falcons head coach, right? The 28-3 Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah. So after something like that, I'm sure he's kind of gotten used to it, especially after such a meltdown in the biggest stage of the NFL. and really the U.S. in terms of sports. I'm sure he's gotten used to that. Now, is there a little bit of pressure? Absolutely. But again, he's been there before. But like you said, he's an old school guy too. He's going to say what he wants to say when he wants to say it. And in this case, it is naming Jayden Daniels the quarterback. Well, you mentioned Sean Payton in Denver too. I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit later with Bo Nix, Zach Wilson, and Jarrett Stidham. It's just the way these guys want to operate. They want to make sure that if you have a quarterback competition, a very true one, like you are seeing one in Denver, or you saw one with the Raiders, or you saw one with other teams, then none of these guys necessarily have an edge over the other or have a sense of like, no, I got it. I just gotta, play out the preseason. These guys do want to get every little bit out of these players, in my opinion, and don't want to name one until they're damn good and ready for it, until they've seen enough from these guys. Again, Jayden Daniels was more of a like, okay, let's just kind of get through the pleasantries and just wait for him to be named the starter. But yeah, I could see a little bit of the pressure coming from the media too. Like, come on, man, like let's go, and he's a head coach. He's starting again. This is his second go as a head coach. You got a brand new quarterback. You're pretty much trying to overturn with new ownership this team. You're trying to turn a new leaf here. So especially in that situation that Dan Quinn finds himself in, I could totally see that being just a little sliver of truth, what he said there.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, Jayden Daniels' backup is Marcus Mariota.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There's a big difference between being the second quarterback taken in the draft. Okay, so let's say the second quarterback taken in the draft, that gets you a 9 out of 10 with hype. And then your backup quarterback is Marcus Mariota, no hype, right? So
zero hype.
A point differential. We'll put him at a 3. So you got a 9 and a 3. Now, Bo Nix was the last quarterback taken in the first round. So he's not a 9, right? He might be a 6. 6 quarterback taken. I think a 6 is fair. And then you have Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham, who are 4s, right? Or maybe a 3 and a 4. My point is there's a major difference between these two quarterback competitions. One of them has, a quarterback with much less hype, with backups that are more hyped. And the other one was the second overall pick with Marcus Mariota, just kind of hanging out in the room. So
just trying to keep his career alive, really, at this point.
Right. So in my opinion, the only true quarterback competition going on was the Vikings and the Broncos and the Raiders. And the Raiders have settled theirs. Vikings have settled theirs. The only ball we're waiting for to drop now is Sean Payton to announce Bo Nix as the starting quarterback. But like you said about Dan Quinn or Jayden Daniels, about his experience, I mean, he does bring in a ton of experience. He has 55 starts over 5 seasons in college. He's not an inexperienced first-year player that's going to come in and just be at, I guess, the mercy of a defensive head coach. Yeah, he brings in a coach that was just the head coach of the Falcons or the Cardinals, that was so excited to coach, Daniel, that Jayden Daniels, that he came out of, his whatever he was doing in Thailand. We don't know, but
we're not going to speculate, but we're going to speculate.
as a group of ex-Navy guys, we know what Americans do in Thailand. I didn't do it.
We know why fuckers go to Thailand.
We know what's up. So anyway, he gets, Cliff Kingsbury to come out and gets him excited to coach again. So I don't know. I think Daniels is in one of the better situations. I think he has legitimate weapons, and Scary Terry and Dobbs, and the running back room is really good. And I'm really high in Jayden Daniels. I've been saying that he was my quarterback all along. Now things have changed a little bit in a good way for me. But when it comes to quarterbacks that there's no way I think they're a bust, Jayden Daniels is on that list. And I don't think he's going to have a bad year. Like, I think he's going to be an upgrade over anything the Commanders have had since Kirk Cousins was there, right? It's been a while.
Because even then, I mean, the most exciting quarterback in Washington was RG3, and his rookie year was really good. He obviously got injured,
Yeah.
and his career was never the same after that. But yeah, even Kirk Cousins, you like that? Like that was prime Kirk Cousins in Washington, and then he went to the Vikings and kind of Washington kind of lost on that consistent quarterback play.
But think about even like Kirk Cousins' story to the NFL. RG3 is the last really big hype player. And
Exactly.
then he's playing injured, a bad snap, reaches for it, never plays in the NFL again. Now,
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins was the backup that came in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, even comparing Kirk Cousins, it's like, yeah, the Commanders liked him, but the expectations of drafting a number 2 overall pick is just totally different. And you're right, RG3 is the closest comparison to what the Commanders have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And RG3 found success pretty early in his career. I think Jayden Daniels is going to do the same thing. So it was the right decision to make. We knew it was going to be made. Nobody for a second thought that it was going to be Marcus Mariota, but Jayden Daniels went along with it and said, when the time comes, they'll tell me. And he's just like, I'll let my play do the talking for me, and he did.
Yep.
So Jayden Daniels, the starting quarterback, week 1 when the NFC South champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, are going to be playing the Commanders. Right off the bat, I think that's a really intriguing game because you got Tampa, who's like, I feel like very disrespected from everything that they've accomplished. I mean, Mike Evans is like a certain amount of yards away. It's less than 1,000 from being like in a category with Torrey Holt and Jerry Rice for like the fastest receivers to whatever 20,000, 18,000 receiving yards or whatever it was. He constantly is like, yeah, he's good, but nobody ever talks about him when they're talking about Diggs and Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill.
Right.
So Tampa kind of comes, into play and be like, hey, we're here. We're gonna win this division. I don't care what Atlanta's doing. And then for Washington, it's the first game of a young rookie quarterback and a beginning of an era. So
yeah,
exciting.
Absolutely. It's going to be an exciting game for sure. Like again, starting week 1, rookie quarterback, basically a new team. Really, like this is the new look Commanders. And it's funny, I want to touch on the Marcus Mariota thing because this is my reaction that Bill had. That's where Mariota landed? Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, he's in Washington? I forgot he was on the Commanders.
I thought he was with the Eagles still.
Yeah, I was like, I thought he was out of the NFL, to be honest. But yeah, no, man, it's going to be a very, very interesting week 1 because we talked about Baker Mayfield too. Coming off this division win and a very, very convincing wild card win against the Eagles. They're coming into this year, like you said, being a little bit disrespected. Oh, Atlanta's got this, Atlanta's got that. And I'm, I'll hand up. I got the Atlanta Falcons winning the division. So count me in on that disrespect towards the Bucs. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very interesting week 1 for Jayden Daniels and Washington for sure.
All right. Well, you don't have to be convinced, but you should at least be impressed. Bo Nix is having a Bo Six, dude, is having a hell of a beginning. Now I'm there's so much hate going on right now on Twitter because what else goes on there? But a lot of it is
welcome to Twitter.
A lot of it is people saying like basically that it doesn't matter what Bo Nix is doing because he's not playing starting players. And I just disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree. All right. For 2 reasons. One, if Bo Nix was looking like ass, they would be sure to tell you. Right. So then it would matter. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But because he's doing good, they would rather focus on, you know what it is? There's excitement for the first time in a fucking decade. A decade.
Yeah.
And people just want to, I don't know why they want to put out the fire. They're annoyed by it. Like Denver's the fucking Chiefs. Like, what are you annoyed by us? We haven't been in the playoffs in 10 years. Like, we're the team that's bothering you. Like, I don't get it at all. But I especially don't get how they're saying that because he's not playing starters, that it's not impressive. I'm sorry. That's not true, because if you are playing a second string, third string practice squad, it doesn't matter. If Bo Nix is supposed to be a starting caliber quarterback, he should look similar to what we would expect Jordan Love or Patrick Mahomes to look like against a practice squad. Okay. If Patrick Mahomes went out against the second string, third strings and dominated, we would be like, of course he did. He's Mahomes. He's playing second stringer. So when Bo does it, why does it not matter anymore? Let's just look at what he did yesterday. So he completed 8 of 9 passes, 80 yards, another touchdown pass, and another 140.7 passer rating. Through the preseason up to this point now, he's gone 23 for 30, 205 passing yards, 2 touchdown passes, 0 picks, 29 rushing yards, and on pace for a 40-point game. He scored on every possession he's ever gone out with the Broncos besides a Lucas Kroll fumble on first down. This guy has scored 30 points now on his possessions that he's come out for. And it hasn't all been pretty. There's been holding penalties on first down, and it was 1st and 20. That used to be a death sentence for Russell Wilson. You can never get behind the sticks. He can't make it up. You have to stay with 3-yard gains, right? And just hope for a 3rd and short. But Bo Nix showed that he can make an 18-yard pass downfield on 3rd and 19, that he can scramble for 10 yards to make up for the holding penalty. His timing, the decision-making, the amount of time that it takes him from the snap to know exactly where he wants to go with the football and then position the football in a great position for the receiver to make a play. Like, those things matter, and they do translate to the starting players. Sure, the rushes might be faster, the coverage might be tighter, but the decision-making is the same. You're in cover 2, I'm going here. You're in cover 3, we're going there. You're blitzing, we're doing this. Like, this is what we're actually evaluating. We're not evaluating if he's going to look this good against the starters. We're just wondering if he belongs in the NFL. And so far, from what we've seen from Bo Nix, is not only does he look like he belongs in the NFL, but he looks like a total steal at the 6th quarterback taken. So either this is going to be, like I said, the best quarterback draft class ever when it's all said and done, or Bo Nix is going to be a steal. But one thing that I think is for sure is that Bo Nix is not going to be a bust. I do think that he's going to work, because I've watched enough football to know when somebody looks different. There's been a quarterback carousel. I've seen them all. I've seen them come in. I've seen splash plays. I've seen Drew Lock and Case Keenum and Joe Flacco and you name it. None of them have looked as good as Bo Nix has looked in these first 2 games. Sean Payton hasn't named the starter yet. I feel like a big part of that is just him trying to tell the media to back off. It's my decision. And we talked about that earlier. Like, why isn't Bo Nix the starter? Why hasn't he been named the starter? Well, nobody thinks that he won't be. There's something else going on, and I think Sean just wants to do it on his time. And he also said, if you watch the interview with Kay Adams, she asked him, what are you doing here? Why? And he was like, look, if there's a competition going on between the defensive backs, and that is still going on, I don't think it's fair to say, oh, I figured this one out, but you guys, because he was drafted higher, he's going to be the starter, but you guys are still battling. He wants to put the 52-man roster together in a moment, not like here and there, which I kind of respect the philosophy, because when you're Sean Payton and you're an ex-quarterback and you draft your favorite quarterback and all the media talks about is how you're in love with Bo Nix, like, you might want to not name that guy the starter right away. Like, you might want the other players on the team to feel like he's earned that as well. But man, Bo Nix going out there and playing the way he did against the Packers, like, it doesn't mean nothing. It means something. And nobody besides haters would think otherwise. Nobody's watching this and going, no, man, it's like, I'm sorry, you're full of shit. I don't know why you don't like Nix, but it's fine. You don't have to like him, but don't be a liar. Like, don't act like what you're watching isn't fucking awesome, because it is. Nix is no longer in the mix. He is the fix for the Denver Broncos and their future for the next 10 to 15 years. And I know that sounds like a big step to make in the preseason. But
Mhm.
there are quarterbacks that have done this to me. Russell Wilson did it in the preseason in Seattle. Dak Prescott did it in the preseason in Dallas. I'm sorry, but when you look so good in the preseason, I'm what am I supposed to believe? You're going to fall apart in the regular season? Like, come on.
This is the thing we have to deal with, because last year for me in the preseason, I was watching Justin Fields and just being like, this is fucking awesome. Justin Fields is going to be dope. You were, probably watching Russ Wilson those few, drives or whatever in those 1 or 2 games. Years prior, I'm looking at Mitch Trubisky. I'm looking at Jay Cutler. I'm looking at Nick Foles. This is how it goes when you're on the carousel. Kyle and I know this. We know how it goes. And just as fans, we're going to deal with this all the time. If your guys are rookies, or if you're counting on, if you're a fan of a franchise who is like counting on this one player to be the guy, every game of the preseason is like, he looked fucking great. He did this, he did that. He looked good. Now, if you've got an established guy like a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a this, a that, the preseason doesn't matter. All you care about is the season. This is how it goes. This is NFL fans. So I'm right there with you. It's like, why do people want to yuck our yum? You know what I mean? If we want to be there, and if we want to be happy about a preseason performance from our rookie quarterbacks, whether they're running with the 1s, the 2s, or the 3s, let us be. Like, let us be.
Yeah, especially if they play awesome. Like, I could understand if the stat line wasn't great and they played mediocre and you were just hyping them up. I could get that. But when you complete, almost every single pass you've thrown in 2 games, like, yeah, people are going to start to get excited.
Stop punishing us for it. Stop talking all this shit. And I've got the same thing going with Caleb Williams. I got a bunch of haters. Obviously, like I said, I'm in an NFC North divisional group chat on Facebook. So obviously that one is going to be just running rampant with Caleb Williams memes, right? But it is what it is, man. It's one of those things where we just kind of gotta, you know what? I'm just gonna put the blinders on. I'm not even gonna look at all this, because I know my guy's doing really well, and there's nothing but potential. There's nothing but potential for these guys, and especially with Bo Nix, especially with the fact, like you said, this is the guy that Sean Payton wants. Sean Payton wants this guy, and he went and got him. And look what he's doing now in the preseason with the 2s or the 3s, whoever he's playing with. He's slicing and dicing the fucking Packers. The Packers scored 2 points. It was a 27-2 game. So you know what I mean? Like, and the Bears are beating, second string defense, first string defense, whatever defense. Like, let us get excited, because that's kind of how it is. But you're not wrong, man. Bo Nix has looked really good. He was rolling out in that one touchdown at Tim Patrick. Got it over a couple defenders. It was a really nice touchdown.
That throw was special. That wasn't a normal throw.
And I think he's got the most yards. Again, this is preseason, but the most yards of all rookie quarterbacks so far in the preseason. I think he's got like 260 yards or 205 yards, something like that, right? It's in the 200s. Right here. Yeah, it's in the 200s. I know that much. So again, he looks good.
205 passing yards. Yeah,
he looks good.
He only played 2 drives yesterday.
And that's what I mean. Like, if these guys were doing poorly, like you said, you'd be getting, oh, he's a bust. He shouldn't have been a first-round quarterback. You should have let him go in the second round. Sean Payton fucked up, this and that, if he wasn't performing like he's performing now. But because he's performing, they're still like, it's the preseason, doesn't matter. He's going to suck. He's fucking old for a quarterback, right? 24, whatever years old. So I kind of look at this and I laugh, because I used to get so angry at it, and it still kind of pisses me off. I'm not going to lie. But at the end of the day, like, after a few minutes, I'm like, no. This guy's going to be good. We're going to be fine. It's going to be great. And Kyle did rehearse that. Knicks.
I actually didn't. I honestly did not rehearse that. But I'm going to quote, there was a tweet or an X, whatever you call it, that I think sums up everything I'm trying to say here. And to quote a former president, he's not famous, so I won't make him famous. But this is what he said. I really hope Bo Nix fails. Not sure why. I just do. I don't like him. Like,
what? Who
who's
said that?
I'm not even gonna say his name because I don't even.
I think
I don't.
was that me?
Bad publicity is good publicity.
Was that me?
This no. He said, "I really hope Bo Nix fails. Not sure why. I just do. I don't like him." And
Wow.
so
Wow.
I put under it. I said, "I guess we're finally going to be good again, Broncos country. We have haters again. It's been a while." And this guy comments under. He goes, "Oh wow, another high Bronco fan." Thinking they are good after 2 preseason games. Such a lovely fan base. It's like, you guys are the ones talking shit. Like, what are you
You guys are
talking
the ones who started it. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah, dude, I don't understand it at all. But
Mhm.
man, Bo Nix has played extremely well. If you just Google winners and losers of preseason week 2, you're gonna
Mhm.
find Bo Nix, the winner of all of them because. Like, the difference is Caleb Williams is the starting quarterback. He really doesn't have anything to lose necessarily by not playing
Mhm.
great. I mean, of course, he wants to play great, but he's the starter no matter what. When
Mhm.
you look at Bo Nix, there's a lot to lose. You could be the guy that doesn't go out week 1 and start for this team, but uh, I think at this point, Rick, I don't think Bo Nix should take any more snaps until Seattle. I
Ooh,
don't think
okay.
that there's anything more for him to prove. Like I said, they gave him 2 drives yesterday. He
Mhm.
threw 2 touchdown passes. One of them got called back because his foot was just a smidge over the line of scrimmage, so they had to
Of
settle for a
course.
field goal.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, you're an inch away from 2 touchdown passes in the first 5 minutes of the game. I mean,
Mhm.
Sean just pulled him out of the game. It's like, okay, I wanted to make sure it wasn't just like last week was,
Right.
maybe you matched up well against the Colts, but to see it continue into Green Bay and to see all the quick decisions, all of the same stuff,
Mhm.
he's going to be the real deal. And the odds right now for there's a couple odds I want to bring up because as a Broncos fan, I always say this: nobody knows your team better than you. And
Yep.
this year, there's a lot of odds that if you don't get in them right now, you're not going to get in because they're going to change. Okay.
Yeah.
One of those is the Broncos over 5.5 wins. Um, Look,
Mm.
Russell Wilson was a much worse quarterback than Denver was playing with last year. And Sean Payton still managed to get 7 wins out of him. I mean, this was
Yeah.
a team that gave up 70 points to the Dolphins. The defense was horrendous. And let's be real, like Sean Payton got Russell Wilson from 32nd in scoring to 15. That's a pretty significant jump, but Sean is going to do much better things with Bo Nix because it's like, what's the point of having a million checks, as a head coach if your quarterback can't do half of them? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's true.
like Sean is finally going to be able to open up that playbook and get into the weeds with somebody that understands and can get in and out of the huddle really quick. So like the Broncos aren't going to win less than 5.5 games, or they're gonna 6 wins. I would be shocked, but I would say 7 is the floor, and
Okay.
9-10 wins is like any higher than that is just wow. We're the Texans of last year,
Yeah.
but there is always the Texans. Keep that in mind.
True.
Every year there's a Texans, and the Texans win total was 5.5 last year as well.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that we are, but I'm not saying we're not either. But I am saying we're not a 5.5 win team. So that's why I put $200 on the over, and that
Oh,
pays out $400. If
let's
you
go.
really, I mean, you look at these odds, I think it's a joke.
Mhm.
And I'm excited to collect my money, maybe as early as week 9. So
Nice.
this is the other one is Bo Nix has 40-1 odds to win offensive rookie of the year. And now hear me out. Caleb
I'm
Williams
hearing.
Caleb Williams still has the best odds. But the
Yeah.
problem is that even if you're high on Caleb Williams, you just can't make that bet. It's only plus 125. So you would have to
Mhm.
bet like $100 to win, 50. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Um, for Bo Nix, you got the 40-1 odds. I mean, that you love those odds because Jayden Daniels, defensive coach, the only other offensive coach with a young rookie was Kevin O'Connell and JJ McCarthy. All
Oh,
these
that's right.
quarterbacks are in defensive systems. I just think having a quarterback-friendly coach matters. Look at Mahomes and Andy Reid. Look what Brian Dable did to Josh Allen. Look at what Tua has, and we're going to talk about his old coach, Brian Flores. Why couldn't Brian Flores get Tua to play the way Tua is playing now? We're going to talk about that.
Right.
But it matters where you're drafted, and Bo Nix was drafted to the perfect fit for exactly what Bo Nix does well, is exactly what Sean Payton and Drew Brees did well for so long. So Bo Nix throwing for over 4,000 yards, and winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, not out of the equation at all. It normally goes to a quarterback. Which quarterback do you think is going to have the most impressive season? Well, like I said, Caleb Williams is still the best odds, but it's just not a good bet. Bo Nix is a great bet. You put $20 on it, you win like $500. Nice. I don't think it's out of the question, because if the Broncos do win 9-10 games, and they are the Texans story of last year, the Bo Nix hype train is going to be real, and it's going to be going full steam. Whereas, Caleb Williams, there's always going to be people who are like, well, they put him on a loaded fucking roster with Swift and Keenan Allen and Adunze and who's the other? Keenan Allen, Adunze, DJ Moore. I mean, like, you really don't have people saying that the Broncos roster is loaded right now. So the quarterback's going to get a lot of that credit. I just think it's a good bet for you guys that are interested. 5.5. That line could change by week 1. I think we've seen too much to still think 5.5 is realistic.
So with that, because I want to get to this concluded quarterback competition, Gardner Minshew will be the man in Vegas. Antonio Pierce has talked about how he wanted both gentlemen to perform well, and they just didn't. I love AP for that, because he is like a coach, right? He's a guy who's a straight shooter, and he's like, you know what? I was hoping both of these guys would do well, but guess what? One did better than the other. With that being said, and I'll get to the other question later after we talk about this. How do you feel about Gardner Minshew winning over Aiden O'Connell? We saw Aiden O'Connell last season, and there was those flashes of like, oh, he looks good. He looks like a competent quarterback in the NFL. But then there was the game where he didn't complete a pass from the first quarter. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, so who exactly do we have? What exactly do we have in Aiden O'Connell? And then I'll tie in the Broncos here after you answer that. How do you feel about Minshew?
I think Minshew is the right choice. Minshew's proven that he is a fringe playoff quarterback. I've said this all along. I think the Raiders are in a weird predicament because you have kind of this quarterback that can get you enough wins where you don't get the number 1 overall pick. Whereas, like, you look at Daniel Jones, okay, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later. Yeah. I think the Giants, and Giants fans don't want to hear this, but their odds of drafting Shedeur Sanders next year, I think they have the best odds at that, which means that they have the number 1 overall pick, because that's where Shedeur Sanders is projected to go. But in order to get that pick, you have to lose your football games. Is the Raiders and Gardner Minshew going to be too good to suck? You know what I mean? Like, not good enough to be great, but not bad enough to get one of those top picks. So Gardner Minshew is your quarterback this year. What's your plan next year? Maybe free agency. I can see the Raiders making a move for maybe a free agent. I have no idea what their plan is, but I think Gardner Minshew is the better option over Aiden O'Connell. If you're watching Aiden O'Connell play and he doesn't look like he's better than Minshew, there's no reason to believe that when the regular season starts, he's going to have this ceiling that isn't appearing right now. Like I said, preseason actually does matter, and it matters what you look like compared to the guy you're battling with. For us, when Zach Wilson or Jarrett Stidham went in, there was a clear drop off. Like, it was almost like the fun was over. It was like, when you watch the Raiders games, there's not that moment when these quarterbacks take turns. It's just like, oh, okay, it's kind of the same thing. But Gardner Minshew's proven that he is the more experienced veteran, so I like the decision to go with him. I think Aiden O'Connell was kind of given priority because he
Yeah.
was the guy last year. So just
Mhm.
seniority had him competing. But I always felt like Minshew was going to win this competition.
I really did think Aiden O'Connell had a shot. And really, it was, I think, earlier this offseason, and I can't remember if it was prior to the preseason games, right around preseason game one, where Devontae Adams was like, hey, I feel like Aiden O'Connell should be the guy because he led us last year. He was the starter last year. He did some really good things. So he had the backing from, your number one wide receiver, which as a quarterback, you love that, right? You love that your number one wide receiver, Devontae Adams, by the way, is the guy kind of vouching for you and being like, he can be the quarterback. He can be QB1, Obviously, I thought Aiden O'Connell had a chance, but really, I think in my heart of hearts, I kind of knew Gardner Minshew was going to be the guy. He gives you a little bit more of that playmaking ability. You see him look down the field more. You see him kind of run the ball. You see he's got a little bit more of a personality. Aiden O'Connell, I mean, for as fringy as Minshew is, like Aiden O'Connell is like stale as fuck. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if there was any point in time in the Raiders season last year where Raiders fans were like, Aiden O'Connell, this is our boy. Yeah, pumped about it, So I feel like Gardner Minshew gives you that edge. He looks downfield more. He's looking for the bigger plays more. He's not necessarily, passing it 5-10 yards past the line of scrimmage and necessarily picking up first downs. He wants to get touchdowns. He wants to get them every single time too, which can be a good and bad thing. And really kind of where was it said? What does it say here? Crafty said Minshew will be serviceable until the Raiders find the real franchise quarterback. That's exactly what it is. I mean, he's just kind of filling the seat in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, he's just as a placeholder until the Raiders get somebody. And like you said, with the Giants, with Daniel Jones, could the Raiders also be a top 5 pick next year, right? Depending how well they perform, or are they going to be another middle of the pack type of pick? Because like you said, could they get someone like Shadur Sanders, Carson Beck from Georgia, these guys coming out? Like, is that the move? Do you have to lose your games now in order to get into a position like that? But in this case, it's going to be Minshew. And I think the Raiders are going with the correct pick, although Antonio Pierce did say, hey, Gardner Minshew is the starter right now. That's who I'm calling the starter for week 1. I'm not saying he's going to be the starter throughout the entire season, but he's a starter for week 1. So it kind of leaves the door open for Aiden O'Connell, which is, I feel like, something that maybe Gardner Minshew dealt with last year as well with the Colts. So he's comfortable in that position. Obviously, a lot of people also thought he'd be the guy in Jacksonville, which, wasn't the case when you got Trevor Lawrence sitting there at number 1. But Gardner Minshew's been through it, and AP's, I think he's just being a straight shooter. Like I said, like, hey, Gardner Minshew is week 1 starter, but that does not mean that if he starts to dip in his production, Aiden O'Connell won't be ready to go, right? So that's what he told both those guys is, both you guys be ready to go. So with that being said, I have seen a lot of projections, Kyle, with Gardner Minshew being, named quarterback now, that still have the Broncos last in the division. What, like, I
don't know. I don't
it,
know what I'm missing.
And that's what kind of I'm looking at, because I'm like, I understand that Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, there's some offensive guys, and now they have some defensive guys with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins on the Raiders, right? And yeah, you named Gardner Minshew your quarterback, but I feel like with Sean Payton as head coach, they still won 7 games with a very below average Russ Wilson, an aging Russ Wilson last year. So I don't know what I'm missing either. Like, well, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, this is like an entirely new team with new energy and a good quarterback. So I think some of this is just outdated. Like, I feel like we have been given new data. It hasn't caught up to the projections, or the projections haven't caught up to the new data. So that's why I was like, hey, make this bet now, because I don't think it's going to be around very much longer. And you're right. I mean, this is one of the weird ones. The Broncos finishing behind the Raiders. in the division, and the
Yeah.
only team that's supposed to be not even worse, as bad as us, is the Patriots. If you look at the
Oof.
odds for AFC teams to make the Super Bowl, the Patriots and Broncos are tied at the very bottom. I look at this team a little bit differently than the Patriots and the Raiders and some of the teams that I actually do expect to struggle, because when you don't have your quarterback figured out, you're going to struggle. It doesn't seem like Denver belongs in that conversation anymore. I mean, you look at Minshew and O'Connell, and both of those quarterbacks, they're not great. They don't have the potential to go out there and really wow you. I mean, just look at their combined passing attempts versus completions in the regular season. They went 24 of 41 passing attempts.
Oh my God.
Like, that's bad. That's really bad. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, in the combined for 191 yards. I mean, Bo Nix has more yards on his own than these two combined, in
Yeah.
much more passing attempts, almost double the passing attempts. So like, it's really weird, to say the least. The Raiders are going to struggle this year. I don't know what they're going to do, if Antonio Pierce is going to be safe or if he gets another year. I think the Raiders were always such a weird decision to me. I mean, I get it, Brock Bowers, but it was like, how are they going to address this other issue? Like, people came at the Falcons because they needed an edge rusher and a safety. And what did they do? They draft Michael Penix Jr. And everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? Well, guess what? In the last last week, they bring in Justin Simmons, and they bring in, what's his name from the Patriots? An edge rusher. Judon Smith. So guess what? They handled their safety and they handled their edge rusher. And now the Michael Penix pick doesn't look that bad, because guess what? They've addressed all their needs. They're ready to go.
Yeah.
The Raiders decided not to go for a quarterback and never addressed it. That's what's weird. Every other team at least had some kind of plan, whether it's the Vikings or the Commanders or even the Patriots, who we thought for sure Jacoby Brissett was going to start. And now this is a fascinating situation in New England, because it seems like it could go in either direction right now. But there's hope in the room when Drake May walks in. There's no hope with the Raiders. They've done nothing to give their fan base even a smidge of an excitement. Now, how would you feel if you were a fan of this team and your team just decided that Minshew and O'Connell were good enough for you? Like, that's what you guys deserve. Minshew and O'Connell.
I will say, I've gone through this, because my options were Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles, and fuck it, let's throw Andy Dalton in there. So I'm like, I'm in the same level.
At one point, but it's like the Raiders. I mean, I guess they were like, "What did you want us to do? Trade up? I don't know, something,
exactly,
something. At least draft fucking Spencer Radler in the 4th round or something. Do something." But they didn't. They just felt like Minshew and O'Connell was good enough for this season. To me, they're not a serious team this year, and they're proving that they shouldn't be taken serious.
And that was one of the things where, at the very beginning of this, you were like, what are the Raiders doing? What have the Raiders been doing? Like, when's the last time they had a quarterback that, I don't know, looked like he was going to be anything? Like
Derek Carr.
Well, yeah, that's actually a very good point. You're right. I completely forget about Derek Carr, because I just think of him as a saint now.
Right.
And they have just made bad decision after bad decision, because even Derek Carr at one point, right, was like, oh shit, Derek Carr and the Raiders, they look good. And then what happens is they get rid of Bisaccia after he basically willed them into the playoffs, or pretty much close to it. And then they bring in Josh McDaniels, who is like a known dog shit coach who comes in and gets rid of everybody. You know that firsthand. Hey, let's get rid of Cutler. Let's get rid of Brandon Marshall. Let's get rid of all of our good players. And yeah, we're just going to be champions. No, that's not how it works, unfortunately. And let's cheat a little bit, right? So that's like the rate. Like, what's his name? The owner, Mark Davis. Like, he seems like he really gives a shit. He seems like he really cares about football. I mean, he grew up in a football family with Al Davis being his dad, obviously. It's just wrong decision after wrong decision after wrong decision. So when I see that the Raiders are supposed to finish above the Broncos in the division, it's just, to me, it is a little bit perplexing. I can see why, because of the bigger names that the Raiders have, and the fact that they've got guys who are technically veterans at the quarterback position versus, your Zach Wilson, Jarrett Stidham, and rookie Bo Nix kind of going at it here in the quarterback competition. But in my brain, I'm still like, I still can't go ahead and say that the Raiders are going to finish above the Broncos. That's why I had them finishing last when we did our division predictions. And that was before Gardner Minshew was named starter, like well before Gardner Minshew was named starter. So
Because it
I'm
never
still
really
kind of
mattered.
yeah, and it's difficult to connect those dots, but like you said, it just like it was either Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew, the most important position in sports. Yeah,
Who the fuck was it between that or Muhammad?
Why are those my only two options, right? So I wanted to get your opinion on that. Yeah.
And Bill says I kind of have that with DJ and DeVito, but I guess the big difference is one guy, DeVito, has the heart of the fans, right?
Yeah.
Minshew is like that type of a player. Minshew is your DeVito, where everywhere he goes, the city loves him. But the difference is Daniel Jones 2 years ago went into Minnesota and won a playoff game, and he proved to the organization that he was good enough for a $40 million a year contract.
Yep.
Last year was a bad year, and a lot of people don't feel like Daniel Jones has what it takes. The Giants decide that they're not going to draft the quarterback, but they're going to get Malik Neighbors and kind of go for one last, like, can we get him back to where he was type of year. Aiden O'Connell hasn't had that playoff win. That's the big difference. It's like even the Giants, who, Daniel Jones has been playing pretty poorly in the preseason, but before this preseason started, people kind of had hope at least that, okay, we're going to ride with Daniel Jones. That's what we're going to do. He's earned a little, I mean, not a lot, but a little leeway, whereas Aiden O'Connell hasn't earned shit. He hasn't won any meaningful games. So, but I get what you're saying, especially on, the side of the preseason and seeing what we've seen with Daniel Jones. I mean, it hasn't looked pretty, Rick. I mean, have you been watching Daniel Jones and the underthrows that they're just still happening? He just doesn't look good. I don't know.
Yeah. Bill, you should
like, you're not like, that guy can lead this team to the playoffs. You don't feel that way.
Not one bit. And I was gonna say, like, Bill, cover your ears, because we're gonna come for your boy right now, Daniel Jones. Danny Dimes is one of the things that I read was like, is this an overreaction or is this somewhat reality? And that is, will Daniel Jones be the Giants starter come week 1? Because again, like you mentioned, he has not looked good in preseason. He's coming off the injury. He's got a beard. He looks new. You're hoping that new look, the little flirtatious interview he had with Kay Adams, you were hoping,
Daniel Jones.
You were hoping that's like new swagger Danny Dimes, right? And he throws a pick 6 from the goal line in the preseason. And we talked a little bit about, it looks like Kyle's dealing with some stuff right here with your camera, but we talked about, again, his job being in danger for week 1. I really don't believe that it's going to be anywhere really in danger. I do believe that Danny Dimes is going to be the starter week 1, because who do you have behind him? You got DeVito and you've got, Bill, help me out here. Who's your other guy? You got somebody else there. I should know this. Kyle's former starter. Kyle's former starter. I know who.
Which one?
The guy you had a lot of hope for, like I did for Trubisky.
Oh, Drew Lock.
Drew Lock. Yeah. Is your camera just a little off right now?
Oh yeah, I'm fixing it.
Okay, cool. So
It's like Rick's talking, but it's me.
but yeah, I think definitely Danny Dimes is going to be starter week 1, but he just does not look good, man. It's kind of crazy to think that they're paying this guy $40 million a year. And look, the Giants do have a out after this season, luckily, but it's just the fact that they gave Danny Dimes so much money because, yeah, look, he looked good under Brian Daboll that year 1 under Brian Daboll because Daboll came in as like the guy who is going to completely change this offense, and he did for the most part. Coach of the year his first year, playoffs, brought the Giants back into playoffs, got people buying into Danny Dimes a little bit more. But I don't know, man. Danny Dimes has got to do a lot. He has got to do a lot to instill more confidence into Bill and all the other Giants fans because so far this preseason, it does not look like it. And, we talked about how the preseason is important or it doesn't matter. I think in terms of Danny Dimes, it matters quite a bit.
Yeah, it does. And the Giants saw Daniel Jones make decisions that they just can't afford him to make in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my camera's being a little laggy right now.
That's all right.
But you can hear me all right, though?
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Okay. His first pass in that game should have been intercepted. His first true taste of contact led to a bigger disaster. He was shaky from the start. And Daniel Jones said that himself after the loss. He said his knee felt good. It was fun to be out there. It didn't start perfect, but we got going, and I feel good physically. But there's really no hiding that the final stat line in what might be his only preseason game is not great. 11 of 18, 138 yards, a 45% passer rating. And he played the whole first half.
Yeah.
The game opening 3 and out, featuring 3 straight passes that were incomplete. Then the second possession was backed up against the shadow of his own end zone and got nothing going. It's just like exactly what you don't. I mean, if you're a hater and you're watching this game, you're literally like laughing, right, at the fans. Like if you're one of those guys that like New York tears, then you're looking at this and you're like, oh my God, this is hilarious. This is who they're going to. I don't know if Daniel Jones is. Hey, maybe this was just a shaky first game, right?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Maybe there's going to be better football ahead. But after the season he had last year, it's like the grace period is up for Daniel Jones. It's like he needs to go make some plays, or Drew Lock's going to be warming up pretty soon. Because let's be real, like the only reason Daniel Jones is starting over Drew Lock right now is because the Giants need to justify the $40 million.
And really, even over Tommy DeVito, that's the only reason Tommy DeVito isn't starting. Because, yeah, he didn't have great games last season. I think we went over his stats and you're like, he went over 200 yards like once or something like that on the games that he played. But also, like, he did provide a little bit of spark. He got the whole Italian thing going. He got Tommy Cutlets. He got that whole vibe thing going. What's that?
He won the crowd.
He won the crowd, exactly. And if you can do that, his agent was on the phones talking about him, doing interviews talking about him and how good he is and how good he's going to be. But like you said, it's the $40 million. It's that contract hanging over Shane's head, the GM, being Shane like, Gillis. Shane Gillis' head. Yeah, we'll call him Shane Gillis. But Shane's head, right, is the $40 million a year, which was highly criticized. But also, like, what were you supposed to do? Like, Danny Dimes took you to the playoffs, and he won a playoff game in Minnesota with Brian Dable as the head coach. And, a lot of us kind of looked at that and we're like, yeah, it does kind of make sense. $40 million, though, I don't know. He's got a hell of an agent, Danny Dimes does, to get $40 million a year. But again, the good thing about this contract is they can get out of it this year. And like Bill's saying, he's playing for his life this year, really.
Yeah. I mean, he'll definitely be a backup somewhere, I mean, if it doesn't work out with him, like,
he's going to get the Trubisky treatment.
Right. And I know that he wants more. So I know that he is playing for his life, and that's not an understatement. Okay. Now, we mentioned this in the very beginning, and you guys are going to think this is funny. Tua brutally honest. Brutally honest? I said it wrong.
Brutally honest?
Brutally honest? Well, Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo doesn't know right now who. Wait, no, that's not it.
Yeah, I was like, wait, which one?
This is about Brian Flores. So Tua criticizes Brian Flores for his coaching in candid comments. So the Dolphins quarterback cleared a significant checkpoint in his career best 2023 season. For the first time in 4 years, he started every regular season game. That was an achievement in itself, but what might even be more valuable is the confidence Tua has gained in his second season playing under McDaniels, which we talked about earlier today. As Tua explained it, he's made a massive mental strides in 2 years under McDaniel, digging out the confidence deficit created by his first two pro seasons. This is why where you're drafted to matters immensely. And playing with Brian Flores, same organization. The only difference is a different head coach. And Tua is like not trying. It didn't sound like he's trying to throw him under the bus, but he's like, I've made massive mental strides because of Brian Flores leaving and Mike McDaniels arriving. To put it in simple terms, Tua explained during his press conference today when he was asked to describe. If you
it was on the podcast with Dan Lebitard.
Yeah. Monday's appearance on Dan Lebitard. If you woke up every morning and I told you that you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you're the best fit for this, you're accurate, you're the best whatever, you're this, you're that, how would that make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? So he says this, and this is my question for you, and then I'll D for the P, but I'm curious to know, is Tua using an analogy here when he says you suck at what you do, you don't belong here, you shouldn't be here? Is he just trying to show the contrast, but is he exaggerating in efforts to show the contrast between the significant differences of two different types of coaching? Or is he legitimately saying that Brian Flores told him that he sucks and that he didn't belong being here and that he shouldn't be here? Because I think if that's what was going on, that's like not okay. It doesn't matter who your quarterback is. That's not how you handle that at all. And you know what? To say you shouldn't be here is like to ask somebody, didn't your parents raise you better? The question answers itself. Of course he should be here. That's why he's here. You know who's not here? Me. I shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
Tua deserves to be there because that's why he's there. It's a rhetorical statement. It's stupid. So, what do you think that this is a real conversation, or Tua just trying to make an example of how helpful McDaniels was?
I really do believe he's telling the truth here with how Brian Flores spoke to him. I really do believe it. and I'm going to tell you guys why. Because we have to remember that Brian Flores comes from the Bill Belichick tree. Bill Belichick does not necessarily hype his players up, have that positive mentality like a Sean McVay or McDaniels here in this case, right? Belichick he would shit on Tom Brady during like film study or like going over film with like the other quarterbacks or the offense, whatever. He would shit on Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the GOAT quarterback of football. As of today, he is that GOAT quarterback. So I think what Brian Flores tried to instill was similar to what Josh McDaniels was trying to do in Denver, what he was trying to do in Vegas, is like, if I can be Bill Belichick, then we will win championships. And that just is not the case, because Bill Belichick was doing it to Tom Brady, who had already won a Super Bowl, his rookie year, second year, whatever it was. So Bill Belichick was able to do it to this. Tom Brady has the mentality of, I'm going to take what he's giving me and apply it to my what's the word? To my play, pretty much. I'm going to prove him wrong. I talked about this earlier with Jordan, with Kobe, and with Brady. Some of these guys can absolutely take a beating from some coaches or even just other people outside of the facility and let that fuel them to play 100 times better or play to their absolute maximum effort. Some guys don't. And to be honest, if you're Brian Flores walking into the Dolphins, facilities or onto the practice field, whatever, into the locker room, these guys are not going to take what you have to say and apply it, because they're looking at you. Again, in my opinion, I think they're looking at you like, what have you done other than coach under a legendary Bill Belichick coach? Because we're not going to give you the same shit that, these guys are giving Belichick, because you haven't proven yourself. And again, Kyle, I was saying this about like Josh McDaniels and what he was trying to do in Denver and in Vegas was like try to instill that Patriot way that Bill Belichick cemented in New England, except they don't have the same carry as Bill Belichick does. Bill Belichick has 5 Super Bowls, 6 Super Bowls, whatever it is. These guys don't have it. So I really don't think Tua was exaggerating when he said something like this. I really don't see why he would do something like that either, because for the most part, if you're in the league, you're going to talk really well about past coaches, about teammates, about coordinators, owners. Like, you want to continue to have that relationship, because you never know. Yeah, you never know where you're going to end up, right? Like, you never do. And that's something that I feel like you kind of not only carry in sports, but in the professional world, in your job day to day, right? Like, you want to have that respect of people and talk well about people, because other than that, you look like kind of an asshole. But I don't see why Tua would have sort of any exaggeration. And really, we've seen McDaniel on the field, how he is in press conferences, and that Tua vibes with that way more. And McDaniel isn't coming off as a guy like, oh, I've worked under Shanahan, I'm like this awesome coordinator that is now a head coach. He's coming in and he's like just being himself. So I think Tua really does appreciate that, at least from what I gather from watching the video of him saying this stuff about Brian Flores. And Brian Flores was honestly just kind of a dick to his players, and especially a rookie quarterback. Yeah. And especially outwardly, going after Deshaun Watson into his second year. Like, how is your rookie quarterback supposed to feel? You know what I mean? Like, how is that supposed to help his development or help his confidence even? If your head coach is looking for another guy, like, you're supposed to instill that confidence every day. And unfortunately, Brian Flores wasn't doing it. And now we can see what Tua is capable of, after, of course, that year of all those concussions that he suffered. Once he learned how to fall, he was doing jiu-jitsu or whatever it was. Under McDaniel, we can see what he's capable of. I mean, he was leading offense and was leading quarterbacks in yardage for a good while there, or all of last year, I should say. So now we're starting to see what Tua can do after you bring in a guy like McDaniel.
Yeah, I think there's like 2 things that you said that are really true. One of them was that you never want to burn a bridge.
Yeah.
You didn't say it like that, but you were like, you want to keep those relationships. And I think typically in the NFL, players are coached at least well enough to avoid saying anything controversial. Right. Yet Tua went out of his way here he didn't hide from the negative experience that he had with Brian Flores. And that means something, because how often do you hear players talk crap about coaches. It actually very rarely happens. Even
Right. Yeah.
coaches that we know, there was like Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. Has Russell Wilson said one negative thing about Sean Payton? Has
Nope.
Sean said one negative thing about Russ? No.
Nope.
They just moved on with their lives. Typically, that's kind of the standard in our league,
Hmm.
is that
Hmm.
players don't kind of go against coaches. But the other thing that I want to bring up is Tua just got paid, man. So
True.
there's certain things that he probably wanted to say that he didn't want to say until he got paid.
Ooh, good
And
point. Good
one of
point.
those, this to me is one of those things. Like, if you're trying to get your first contract, not a good look to go and talk shit about your old coach, right?
Hmm.
Because people will twist anything to give a reason to not pay you. Oh,
Hmm.
look how he talks about his coaching staff. He
Yep.
doesn't
Yep.
follow the what do you call it, the unspoken rules.
Yep. Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
they would have done that, but Tua got his bag of money, and now he's not willing to kind of hide or shy away from these comments. And
Yeah.
hopefully for Brian Flores, like, hopefully that is, I don't even know what to make of it. I mean, I would say, like, hopefully it's a little bit of an exaggeration. Hopefully he didn't show up every day and was like, you
Hmm.
suck, you shouldn't be here. um
Could
because
you imagine? Like, you show up to work every day and your boss is like, dude, you suck.
and like, look at how easy it would be for a young, hothead to be like, fuck you,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
playing.
exactly.
I'm not playing for you. But Tua still went out there and look, it was a long process, but I
Hmm.
think, looking at it at where he's at now, I mean, he probably feels, like you said, very lucky that his coach is who his coach is, because his coach was a big
Yeah.
reason he got paid.
Hmm.
Those stories came out that Mike McDaniels was pounding on the owners' tables for Tua to get paid.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of, I mean, it's not just Tua. That's the kind of coach every quarterback needs. You see the memes, like, find somebody that loves you the way Jim Harbaugh looks at Justin Herbert. Uh,
Yeah, those are good.
Sean Payton's love
Those
affair
are
with
good.
Bo Nix.
Hmm.
You want your quarterback to be in love with the head coach, or vice versa. Like, you want that relationship to be strong.
Hmm.
And this is just another example on the long list of reasons why defensive coaches don't do well with rookie quarterbacks. They just don't.
Stop saying that, because Eberflus is the defensive guy, and I really want this Caleb thing to work.
Caleb Williams will be fine. He's different.
Okay. Okay, thank God. And like, as Bill mentions here, right? Flores is the DC, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings now. So a lot of these defensive guys from the Vikings will, come out in defense of their coordinator, of their guy, right? Leading the defense. The thing we have to realize too, and kind of take a step back for, is these guys know Flores in a completely different situation than what Tua did. So what I think is important really is when we look at these guys talking about, in this case for Tua, talking kind of in a bad light about Flores as a head coach, to him specifically, and maybe even possibly to the team. This is completely different to what these Vikings players on the defense specifically are in with, like what type of relationship they have with Brian Flores. So we have to take a step back and be like, okay, both of these things can be true. Tua's situation can absolutely be true, and these guys that are going to eventually stick up for their guy Brian Flores can also be true. It's a different situation. He's clearly, obviously, he's in a coordinator position. He's no longer a head coach. So we just got to take both of these kind of at, like, we got to trust these guys because they have to go to work every day. And if you've seen any episode of any Hard Knocks ever, it's not a high school football. It's not college football where your coach is like, come on, man, you got to fucking do better. You got to play this.
Right.
Like, they're talking to each other like they're grown-ups. They're talking to each other like they're grown-ups. They're like, hey, man, how's it going? Owens, Simone Biles' husband, who's a safety on the Bears, requested time off to go to the Olympics to watch Simone Biles in the Olympics. Eberflus came up to him and he's like, hey, man, oh, yeah, so you're going to be gone, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to be gone these days, and then I'm going to be back. You're going to be back? Oh, okay, cool. You're going to be back. We'll send you like, it is a adult to adult conversation. So it's a very, very different, obviously, environment in an NFL practice field locker room, the day-to-day with your coaches and GMs and front office, than it is in college and high school. So again, we've got to take all of this into consideration when we're going to look at these eventual Vikings guys come up and stick up for Flores.
Yeah, the bummer is that the Vikings and Dolphins don't play this year. They didn't play last
That'd have been
year.
Cool.
That would have been
Imagine.
awesome.
I was
Tua
gonna
would
say.
want to ball out in that game. But yeah, man, you got to treat adults like adults, and that's just like at the high school level. I went from going to the type of high school that Tim Tebow went to, like high schools that are ran like college scouts coming in all the time.
Very important, yeah.
Just like, it is not just high school football. I mean, it is like a big deal. And then going to Inglewood High School, where the coaches were just disrespectful and they cursed at the students, and they were just kind of like, it was like Friday Night Lights, how there was like that dirty team in the final game.
Oh, yeah. Dallas Carter?
The coach that was like...
Dallas Carter, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Literally, like, that type of coaching is they wear it as a badge of honor. These like dirty kind of just like, I scream at my players. I'll tell them they don't belong. Like, and I've been to a school like that. And as much as I love football, like I turned in all my pads. I was like, I'm not playing for this coach. So it matters.
Yeah,
it matters
absolutely.
what kind of coach you have. And it's
absolutely.
like, there's a quote I love, and I'll leave it with this: treat a man as he is, and he will remain as he is. Treat a man as what he can become, and he'll become it.
Ooh, I'm about to be coming too right now.
But one man that we're going to treat as he is Bryce Young. And Bryce Young,
Kyle hates him. He hates him.
I just like to keep it rolling at this point, but I really don't. I've been saying I don't think it's gonna work. That doesn't mean that I don't want him to work. Honestly, exactly, I would like to be wrong. I would. I won't, but I would like to be wrong. But yeah, man,
they were dicks. Say it, Kyle. Those coaches at Inglewood.
Oh yeah, they were dicks. They were. Okay, so it's hard to judge Bryce Young because he's the number 1 overall pick in last year. Panthers give up a fortune to take him and swap with the Bears. But Bryce Young struggled a lot his rookie season, but he also hasn't really had a consistent plan in place his rookie season. He changed, like, the offense systematically changed 3 times in the offseason.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's not going to be beneficial for anyone, especially a rookie quarterback. And that's why I think you saw the kind of season you had out of Bryce Young. You can't change an offense 3 times in the offseason before the week 1 kicks off and then expect him to pick it up. Pick what up? We don't have an identity. And what did the Panthers look like all season? They looked like a team without an identity, right? There was nothing that you could say the Panthers do well offensively.
Yep.
That's the whole idea of having an identity, is like, yeah, we're a running team. We run. At least Arthur Smith had an identity as a running, team. The Panthers had no identity. It's worse. And then they go into this year. I think they add a lot of weapons, but Bryce Young is not playing in the preseason, which is kind of weird because there's a lot. I guess it's because they're like, Bryce Young's our starter, whether he plays good or not, because we just drafted him number 1 overall. We can't move off of him because of a bad preseason game. Are you kidding me? We're way too invested.
Exactly.
But at the same time, like, don't you want to see Bryce Young go out there and get live reps, like, with his new team against teams that aren't your own? Like, I think Bryce Young should be out there playing. I think number 1 overall is not a good enough reason to not have him out there.
Yeah, and the live reps.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. And we got Nick in here going, "Evening, fellas. We are winning the Super Bowl." Bo, 6. Bo 6.
Oh, 6. Broncos Bears. Super Bowl.
Ooh, oh, that would end the podcast. That would end the podcast.
That would be rough. I don't even know how we would maneuver that.
Because
one of us would be celebrating and one would be like having their worst day ever.
And then we'd still have to do the post-game analysis. Like,
just like, do you let the guy have the floor that's celebrating or the guy that's like pouring their heart out?
Could you imagine like the Bears win and I'm over here like, no, Kyle, please go right ahead, dude. And I'm just containing that excitement, just watching the confetti fall on the Bears. You'd be like Super Bowl.
Jason Kelsey when Travis Kelsey was trying to celebrate and
he's all crying and shit with their mom. Oh God. All right, back to Bryce Young. The fact that, like you said, like this is something that is changing. The offense is changing quite a bit. They bring in what was the wide receiver they brought in? Legit? No, not was Xavier, it Legit?
Yeah.
It wasn't Xavier Legit, right? Yeah, they brought in Deontay Johnson, another wide receiver. They still have who was the guy that they had last year, wide receiver 1 from the Vikings. He was on the Vikings prior. Adam Thielen. So you've got some guys there. You got Deontay Johnson, who's still kind of a young guy. Thielen, who's a veteran, and you're bringing a rookie wide receiver, right? This is clearly something that needs to be played out. And what better place to do it than in the preseason?
Yes.
And the fact that these reps aren't being taken by all of these guys who need to mesh to fucking together in the preseason to go into the regular season looking good. They're not playing in one game. Like, are they going to, if they play in week 3 after training camp, after maybe combined camps with another team, which I don't know if they've had yet. Okay. Maybe this is starting to maybe you want to see what they can do in that week 3, but these are live fucking valuable reps with a new head coach, new wide receivers,
brand new
offensive line, and a quarterback who's coming off a terrible, terrible rookie year. Like if this was the Bears, I'd be like, what the fuck are we doing here? You know,
they were 2-15 last year. Like, what are we doing?
Exactly. And again, if this was something in a situation where, again, it's like a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's not playing any preseason games. You're goddamn right he's not playing any preseason games. You know why? Because he's been to the playoffs and the Super Bowl in 2 healthy seasons. Like he has done enough to not play these. But Bryce Young in this offense, it's all brand new. We have talked about offensive lines, defenses, taking a few games even in the regular season to really get to know each other and get to know how they operate. But you still have some preseason to get that done. So the preseason is really one of those times where you are starting to, knock off, not necessarily the rust, but knock off those like beginner unit mistakes to go into the season and at least have a manageable defense or an offense or offensive line or wide receivers, right? So the fact that they're not doing this with Bryce Young and this entire offense, which is, like you said, pretty much brand spanking new, is kind of ridiculous. And I think it's going to bite them in the ass as soon as the season starts.
Yeah, and you do have a lot of people that are close to the facility saying things. Ian Rappaport had a tweet out. It's like he flipped the switch this year, and that's what Derek Brown, the Panthers star defensive lineman, said about Bryce Young. Kay Adams went to the Panthers practice and said, sounds like Bryce Young can read the room, confident, supported, ready to lead. From Good Morning Football in Charlotte, Bryce Young appears primed for a bounce-back season, finding himself in a much better situation. So you're hearing a lot of the right language coming out of the camp. But I'm with you on this. I mean, they aggressively rebuild their offensive line. Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, and offensive tackle Yash Nijman. Neisman. And then they also added weapons, Deontay Johnson. They draft Jonathan Brooks and Jatavion Sanders. So, like, the Panthers but this is the thing about the offseason. Everybody's good on paper, right?
Mm-hmm. True.
Until, these people aren't good, right? Like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that's going to happen, but it's like, on paper, Jatavion Sanders is going to be an awesome tight end. Jonathan Brooks is going to be a great running back. The line is going to
Mm-hmm.
mesh together perfectly. But we know that's not the case. And the more time that the offensive line, the more reps that this entire team gets together,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm with you on these are really valuable reps. And I mean, from what you're hearing, though, out of camp is like maybe Bryce Young is having such a good offseason that they're like, no, we feel
Yeah.
confident in our quarterback and we don't want him to get hurt.
And real quick to Bill's comment here, just check the depth chart on ESPN for the Panthers, and there's a lot of red marks, 14 questionable, 2 out, 4 on IR. The Panthers did just sign 5 players just this past week.
And maybe
5
that's
players.
why they don't want to play Bryce Young. They're like, we got the injury bug.
That's a good point. Here we are criticizing them, but still, like, week 1 and like at least a few reps, man. I still think it is. I still think it's going to be beneficial. Yeah,
You're
at least a series.
Like,
what'd you say?
You're not Aaron Rodgers. Like, Aaron Rodgers
yeah,
playing the preseason. CJ Stroud doesn't need to play. Like, look, if Caleb Williams is playing in the preseason, then in my opinion, that kind of rules off Bryce Young not playing in the preseason.
Right. Exactly.
Because like that is another number 1 overall pick. What did Bryce Young do last season to make you feel like you're safe this year? like he doesn't need the reps.
0.
2-15, 10 interceptions, 2,877 yards in 16 games. Like, that's what you're good with that. Like, I don't know.
You're confident in that?
It does seem a little bit weird, but the vibes are right in the Panthers facility. It's just like as outsiders, I think we can all agree that it's a little strange that Bryce Young's not at least getting 2 offensive series like per game, like 2. Just put him out there for a drive and see how the Panthers look.
Minimum, and we'll see how that all goes with Carolina. A lot of people, and I'm sure you and I think we had them last in the South there in the NFC South. And I don't think anybody else has them any higher. So we're going to see how they start off the season and really, really get to see how much of an impact this not playing Bryce Young in the preseason is going to be. But Kyle, I think is it time for the motherfucking for the
To the chats with Kyle. It's been a while. Matt Judon is pushing a new contract in style. Look, Matt Judon, who was traded from New England because he couldn't settle a contract negotiation with the New England Patriots. The Patriots end up saying, all right, we're just going to trade you. They send him to the Falcons. And the weird thing is the Falcons hadn't worked out a long-term deal for Matt Judon. We talked about that last week when the trade happened. So we were like, well, maybe one's going to get done pretty soon. Well, they asked Matt Judon about the new contract with the Falcons, and this is what he said. I can't really demand or ask for anything I haven't worked for. I'm not pushing a new contract with the Falcons. So this is weird, okay?
A little bit, yeah.
So he's pushing for a new contract with New England, and in one way he's like, well, I mean, New England knew that they should have paid me. Look how awesome I, played for New England. But at the same time, it's like, well, Atlanta can still watch that film. Like, it's not like that film doesn't exist because you weren't a Falcon. You know what I mean? So it's kind of weird how, like, when you're in a certain place, you're like, I need the money now or trade me. And then you get to a new place and you're like, I'll go out there and play for a year and, prove that. And it's like, okay, well, like, couldn't you have done that in New England? Like, what if you would have had another good year in New England? I guess what it probably comes down to is the confidence that a long-term deal was ever going to get done. Whereas maybe in Atlanta, he feels confident, if I play a good year, they'll long-term pay me. And in New England, they'll just tag me and keep me, keeping the carrot dangling in front of my face. I don't really
Yeah.
know, but it's a little strange to see how sometimes a player can go into a new situation, and then his attitude in that new place is the same attitude that would have preserved the previous, destination or location he was at.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
I saw this. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish up.
no, I was just thinking like Ayuk,
Mhm,
Ayuk goes to, a new team, let's say,
mhm,
he would be like, okay, I'll go out there and play, on the tag or whatever the case is, but not willing to do that for San Francisco. And
mhm.
that it's just it's weird to me, but it's kind of like when you leave a job and you go to a new job, and then when you go to that new job, you're like, okay, it's a clean slate. Everything I did over here, wrong, or my mistakes, let's not bring him over there. We're going to wake up a little bit earlier. You try to like improve yourself for the new person, relationships,
Right,
whatever it
right.
is. You're always your better self, when you're trying to start a clean slate. But there's like a lesson to be learned where like the water isn't greener on the other side, it's greener where you water it. Like you need to, be planted and kind of reflect those attitudes where you're currently at,
Mhm.
and then maybe you'll grow. It's not always
Yep,
over the fence, but I have no idea. It's just worth pointing out that it is kind of strange how the contract's not a big push in Atlanta.
that's right. And put that on a quote card. The water isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water your water. Uh, um, I was looking at it because I saw this too, and my first thought, and it was actually on Instagram, and I saw a comment that kind of agreed with my first thought, was like, fuck yeah, man, what a great attitude to have into a new in a new location. But now you saying that, it kind of like put something in my head where I'm like, wait, was he trying to maybe get out of New England by wanting to get a new deal, knowing that they are not in win now mode? They are in a rebuild mode with possibly Drake May starting, and maybe he's got issues with the front office. Again, he's 32. A lot of these guys at that age know that they don't really have too much time left to get on a championship roster, or, if you're not on a championship roster, get a championship in general. So maybe now that attitude in Atlanta is like, hey, I got to be, I don't want to say this in like a demeaning tone, but I got to be a good boy to make sure that we've got a shot, and I got to give it my all out there, right? So yeah, I wonder now that with you saying that, like, was there an issue there, or was it more of like him being like, look, I don't want to be in New England, but I don't want to make it a huge thing to where I'm unhappy in New England and I'm requesting a trade. It's just I want to get a new deal with New England and get the money, or I want to be traded to a possible Super Bowl contender, and that's what exactly happened in Atlanta. So it is.
Conspiracies with Rick.
What'd you say?
Conspiracies with Rick.
Conspiracies with Rick.
Honestly, it's like it's an angle that I would have never thought of, but I'm glad you
Mhm.
brought it up because it's
Yeah,
you just never know what people are up to. I mean, this is a 4-time Pro Bowler, and he
exactly.
might be like, I'm wasting my prime here.
Yeah,
I want to go
absolutely.
somewhere. And
Yeah.
you're right, that could be it. I guess only Judon really knows. I called him Judon Smith earlier. It's
Did you?
Matt Judon. I
It's
don't
Matt
know why I
Judon.
called him Judon Smith. I think that's a famous pastor in Seattle.
Kyle's like the great Judon Smith, praise be he.
But yeah, dude, for whatever reason, I mean, he is 32 years old, so
Yeah, true.
it's very likely what you're saying is true, and he just wants to win. And
Mhm.
then for Bill's Shies, did you see this video, Rick, of uh, Elijah Chapman running down the Texans running back like
I
25, 30 yards downfield?
I did see that it was an Instagram video, and it was funny because he had just gotten like off a block, or he had actually just stood up or something, right? Like he was stumbling and he got up, and you see the running back hugging the sideline, and you see this guy
Just
catching up to him.
I'm like, I literally, I think I even tagged Bill in it and was like, sign him. Active
Sign him.
roster. Right now, I've seen all I need to see. Oh my gosh, Rick, I think we got an old friend in the chat.
Yeah, we do. JST.
What is up, dude?
One of our first international
Yep.
viewers of this podcast. JST, what's up, guys? It's been a while. It has been a while, JST. It has been a while. So hopefully you can join us for more episodes while we're doing them.
Bears and
during the
Broncos are
season.
good now.
Yeah, it's been a while. So you got to catch up on these.
We got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, but I love that. I love that video of the guy Bill's mentioning here, Elijah Chapman. Just that guy was huge, and he caught up to a running back. And it reminds me of, I never realized or took notice of how, because my brother played high school football, and he played at one of the better schools in Illinois, and he was an offensive lineman and he played defensive line. But I never realized, because he was a bigger guy, how fast he can move. I just thought bigger guy, not necessarily the fastest, but I was like, God damn. Like, now that I realize and I go back and like I'm like, that he was fast for a big kid. You know what I mean? Like, he's probably faster than me at that point. But it was just ridiculous.
Are so athletic. It's ridiculous.
They are.
Like, look at Jason Kelsey. Like, people think, especially when you're a kid. When you're a kid, you see those big bellies and you're fooled.
Yeah.
Those guys put so much work into keeping their weight up. And as soon as they retire, they slender down completely. Look at Jeff Saturday.
Or even Joe, who was he? The Cleveland Browns starter.
Joe Mama.
That was good. That was a good dad joke. Oh my God, Joe, what the fuck was his name? Somebody help me out in the chat. But the guy who retired as a Cleveland Brown, he got picked up.
Joe Thompson.
Joe Thomas.
Joe Thomas. There it is.
Was it Joe Thomas? Okay,
yeah.
I think it was. But yeah, you're right. They slimmed down. Like you said, Jeff Saturday, Joe Thomas, all these guys. Like, it's crazy how they slimmed down, and you're like, no way. You were huge.
Oh, yeah.
And super like athletic, and now you're kind of like skinny, still athletic, I'm sure, but like it just doesn't look
totally
right.
Different.
Yeah,
it's like Brian Urlacher. He grew hair.
Like, yeah, what? That's not right. Don't just shave it off, Brian. Shave it off.
It's like reverse aging. I don't even know what's going on with these hard-nosed football players.
JSC saying #1 Chiefs fan in the building. I don't know. KC right here might have something to say about that. But with all that being said, Kyle's chives, we got Bill's chives in there obviously too. But thank you guys all so much for joining us on tonight's episode of the Only Football Podcast. We are days away. We are a couple weeks away from the start of the NFL season. We're exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 7 plus 5 is 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 days away. Sorry, 17 days away from the start of the NFL 2024 season. We are less than 3 weeks away, everybody. We are almost there, and you can catch all of the streams here on the Only Football Podcast with Kyle and I. I'm going to try to bring you guys a different view of streaming with me. I'm going to get a recliner, a couch, and give you the view from me being on the couch and being a slob, just sitting on my ass for hours on Sunday, just for you guys. So thank you guys again for tuning in. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube, become a member. We got memberships back up. We got super chats back up. So for only $2.99 a month, you can become a part of the Only Football fam. We got a couple cool emojis that you guys could put up there. Bill's one of them. Ginger's one of them. And then me and Kyle are one of the emojis you guys can pick. So it'd be really, really great. We would really appreciate it if you guys became a member of the Only Football fam. And if not, if you can't do it right now, please at least like the video, subscribe, share the video, whether you're on YouTube, Twitch, or X. We would appreciate all of that. Speaking of X, You can follow me at, oh, wait, down there. Sorry, down there. And now, Rick, Kyle, where can they follow you on X?
You can follow me on X at NFL with Kyle for all Broncos stuff. We are 19 days, 2 hours away from officially having the Broncos Seahawks game. And you can follow a bunch of content down there. Interviewing a Ravens fan tomorrow. Definitely check that out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was somebody that I did. Bill's the only one that remembers, but it was the national championship game, and I joined with these guys that I was like, I never want to video with them again. They just were obnoxious, and it was bad. And it really was. Bill was like, I couldn't. Bill even left, and
he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it.
And the guy reached out to me. He's like, God, those guys suck. I'm sorry, dude. And then, like, almost a year later, it feels like, yeah, he reached back out. And I was like, sure, yeah, we'll do a Ravens interview.
Bill said that show sucked. Oh, we got Bill gifted a membership. And it went to Brother T. Let's go. Thank you, Bill, for donating that membership.
Let him know.
Yeah, please do. Let him know that now he's a member of the Only Football family. He has to tune in. And he has to put it up on, God, what's the name of his bar?
Mama Tried.
Mama Tried. He has to put it in all the TVs of Mama Tried. So no big deal. He is now obligated to do that. But yeah.
He's opening a bar in Panama now.
What's that?
He's opening a bar in Panama.
No shit.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's going to be dope, man.
Yeah, he's been flying. He's there. I think he got back today, or he might still be there, but he's been, doing that. So opening up another bar. I forgot what they're going to name it, but it's supposed to be great location. It's going to be a huge hit. He's super pumped about it. So yeah, we're going to be international here on the Only Football podcast. We're going to be on TVs in Panama, not just Miami.
I love it. So happy for him, for Brother T. So if you're ever in the Miami area, go to Mama Tried Bar and have a good time. Have a beer. Say what's up to Brother T. Also, you can follow us on YouTube. You can follow me at my YouTube page at Yo, I'm Rick. Kyle, you already said your YouTube, right? Or did you not?
Kyle Kitzman.
Go check out all the Denver Broncos stuff he's doing. It's really, really great content that Kyle's putting up there on his own channel. So go check that out. And again, on on X, on YouTube, on Twitch, make sure to follow us. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, share. We would super appreciate it because like Bill knows, unlike the show that sucked for Bill, this one's actually kind of dope. I think we're doing a really good job. So thank you guys again so much for joining us. And Kyle, always a good time, brother.
Always a good time. The water is greener on the other side.
See you soon.